Is this you? Have you just heard about a really cool tabletop game where you can slay dragons, conquer dungeons, and do literally anything your heart desires? But you opened the rulebook and saw this thing. A huge character sheet. What do all these numbers mean? What the heck is a saving throw? And what is even the difference between wisdom and intelligence anyway? Welcome to the guide to what the heck all these numbers mean. When I first joined D&D, I was so excited to start role-playing and adventuring, but this sheet just made no sense back then. What you are about to watch is what I wish was explained to me when I first started. We're gonna break down this character sheet, figure out what everything means, and most importantly, when and how you'll use these numbers to roll your dice. Unfortunately, we won't have time to go over how to make a character in the first place. Maybe that'll be another video? If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. Fellow DMs, if you have any corrections of mistakes I made, drop them in the comments below as well. I make mistakes sometimes, it's okay. With that, let's begin. Your adventure starts now. First things first. You'll want to use the 3-page character sheet available for download at dnd.wizards.com/character sheets. Unfortunately, the smaller ones like the 1-pagers don't have a lot of room for all of the class features that you'll gain throughout a campaign as you level up. Let's start with the very top. Easy stuff, just general info about your character. What's their name? What species are they? What class did you pick for them? What's a class? It's your playstyle as an adventurer. The fighter is the closest you get to a quote-unquote basic class, good for hand weapon fighting. Barbarian is great if you like charging in, swords blazing, high on damage. Rogues are the pick for stealthy players, able to deal extra damage when striking from the shadows. More of a quick, dexterous fighter? Monks work best, allowing you to add lots of extra blows. The rest of the classes use spells. Clerics and paladins are devoted followers of the gods, using their holy blessings to help their teammates and hurt their enemies, respectively. Some might say that the cleric is the quote-unquote healer class, although clerics can do so much more. Rangers are great for tracking. Warlocks, wizards, and sorcerers are somewhat similar in that they're all more focused on spellcasting, but each one has their own caveat. Like if you're a wizard, don't charge headfirst into a fight. It never ends well. Trust me. And finally, druids are great for, Oh, and can't forget the bard. The bard is a spellcasting support class, often using performance and music to achieve their goals. There's also blood hunter and artificer, but those can be elaborated on another time. Next is your level. As you progress through the game and depending on your DM, you gain levels, which give you more abilities and more health. Background is what your character used to do before becoming an adventurer, which often gives you some additional proficiencies. Race is what species you are, whether an elf, dragonborn, or whatever you picked. These give you additional abilities as well. Alignment refers to a chart of different personality alignments, such as lawful good, chaotic evil, and the ever-dreaded chaotic neutral. These are mostly cosmetic, so don't sweat it. And finally, experience points. Some DMs don't even use this, choosing to just level characters up after a set amount of sessions, but this is where you would track experience points if you use them. All that aside, let's jump into the scary part. Don't worry, it's not that scary once it starts clicking, I promise. I like to separate the sheet into 3 sections: core abilities, non-combat, and combat. Dividing it this way specifically illustrates when you're most likely to use these numbers and how they affect the others. Combat is used during, combat. Non-combat is very often used for roleplay, but can also appear in combat sometimes. Core abilities inform both combat and non-combat stats and contain your base abilities, and you get more as you level up. Let's start with base abilities, since this section informs a lot of the others. This includes ability scores and the features and traits box. These 6 numbers here are your base ability scores, and they max out at 18, but some dungeon masters let them go higher. They dictate how good your character is at certain abilities. The higher the score, the greater bonus you get to your rolls using that ability, and the better your character is at that thing. The official formula to determine these scores is minus 10 divided by 2, rounded down, and yes, you can get negative roll bonuses, and it sucks. So long as your score is above 10, you won't receive a penalty. We have strength, dexterity, wisdom, charisma, intelligence, and constitution. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory, but let's address the exceptions real quick. Constitution is how much punishment your physical body can take before breaking. What's the difference between wisdom and intelligence? Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it into a fruit salad. Intelligence is more book knowledge, while wisdom is street smarts learned from life experience. The bonus you see under the score indicates how much you add to a skill check using that score. A skill check is basically a task that your character might not automatically succeed on, so you have to roll the dice to see if you succeed, fail, or succeed at a cost. This is up to the Dungeon Master. They will ask you for all checks you make. So, if I was rolling a strength check to move something, I would roll a d20. Looks like I got a 12. In this case, since my strength score is 16, I add plus 3 to the roll and get a total of 15. The Dungeon Master says I pass the check, and I'm able to move the object, and the Dungeon Master describes how this goes down. Next up is features and traits. These are both combat and non-combat and span the entirety of gameplay. These are given to you by your species, background, and your class. These are abilities that modify your gameplay, like resistances or boosts and buffs, and other things that can help you, like Bardic Inspiration. You'll start off with features from your species, like Dark Vision and Hellish Resistance for Tieflings. Then, your class will give you some features as well, like buffs. This is when something like Bardic Inspiration would come in. As you level up, you get more and more features from your class. Lastly, your background can give you a feature, but often these are more roleplay centric. Be sure to remember most of your features. You'll definitely need them in sticky situations. Next section is non-combat, often used during roleplay and rarely in combat. This includes proficiency bonus, saving throws, skills, passive wisdom, proficiencies, equipment, and all these personality trait thingies. Skill checks during gameplay are very often more specific than just rolling the base ability scores. One use of the base ability scores is for saving throws, in this box here. Think of saving throws like this. This is how fast your character reacts to a spell, or something like rocks falling from a cavern ceiling. You can also be proficient in certain saving throws, which means you get to add this number, your proficiency bonus, to the roll bonus in the saving throw section. Your Dungeon Master will also ask you to make saving throws from time to time, just like checks. Back to skill checks being more specific, this list right here, your skills, will be the most common checks your Dungeon Master will ask from you from time to play the game. The roll bonuses from your ability scores will all carry down to here, corresponding to their abbreviations. CHA equals Charisma, WIS is Wisdom, and so on. Depending on your class, species, and background, you will end up with proficiencies in some of these skills. Just like saving throws, you add your proficiency bonus to areas you have proficiency in. We don't have time to address every single skill, but I'll try to quickly explain each visually. Acrobatics, Animal Handling, Arcana, Athletics, Deception, History, Insight, Intimidation, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, Perception, Performance, Persuasion, Religion, Sleight of Hand, Stealth, and Survival. As mentioned before, this here is your proficiency bonus. This number goes up as you level up and gives you boosts to whatever your character is proficient in. What's this box? Passive Wisdom? Don't worry about it, it's 10 plus your perception modifier. The Dungeon Master is the only one who has to worry about this. It's basically if your character notices certain things without making a perception check. This box is all your equipment. This can contain your weapons, but also various miscellaneous items that will aid your adventure. Although, oftentimes, you won't use these. Like the grand majority of the time. Weird, I know, but there is a possibility you might need them for specific situations. You never know. Such is the nature of adventure. This also carries your currency, which is, well, useful for buying things. Proficiencies is a box that mainly tells you what weapons can use your proficiency bonus, as well as what armor, and maybe shields, won't cause you any penalties because, I guess, if you don't have proficiency, they're too heavy for you or something. Who knows? This also contains proficiencies in things like instruments, tools, or other things. This mostly means if you are using the tools you are proficient in, you might get advantage or a bonus when rolling with them, depending on your dungeon master. And finally, this box also has the languages you can speak. You don't actually have to speak these fantasy languages, but the dungeon master will notify you if you can understand what certain NPCs are saying if they're speaking anything other than common. And finally, for the end of non-combat, we have the personality section. These are mostly cosmetic and super customizable. You should have 2 personality traits, 1 ideal, 1 bond, and 1 flaw. The most this section does is inform you how to roleplay your character and help guide what their decisions might be. I might be making a video in the future to kind of delve more into roleplaying, as roleplaying was something I also struggled with when I first started playing the game. Last section on the character sheet to cover is combat. In combat, you get an action, a bonus action, and movement per turn. Sometimes you can also have a reaction. This section covers armor class, initiative, speed, attacks, current and temporary hit points, hit dice, and death saves. And a little small note about spellcasting. If you're a new player, I highly recommend you pick a non-spellcaster class so you can learn the basics of the game without factoring in spells just yet. Let's start with these 3 here as we enter combat. Armor class, initiative, and speed. Armor class is, unless otherwise modified, 10 plus your dexterity modifier, the modifier being the single-digit number in your dexterity ability score. Armor class tells you how hard it is to hit you. The Dungeon Master will describe misses as either your armor absorbing the blow or you deflecting or dodging the attack. It's mostly a nebulous concept not attached to simply being tough and able to soak up impacts with no damage. Initiative is how fast you are to react in combat, and is always rolled at the beginning of combat to determine who goes first. The higher the roll, the earlier your turn is in the turn order. For example, oh no, the party just got jumped by bandits. Joe the Rogue rolls initiative along with everyone else. He gets a 16, adds his +3 initiative, and gets a 19, meaning he starts relatively high in the turn order. Speed here is relatively straightforward. It's generally just 30 feet, unless otherwise stated anywhere in the character creation process, or a spell changes it. This is how much you can move in combat per turn. However, if you are within 5 feet of an enemy and you move away from them with your movement, you may provoke an opportunity attack, so be careful. There's an action you can take called Disengage, where you can circumvent an opportunity attack, but you sacrifice your action for it. Next, for combat, we have attacks and spellcasting. This box contains your weapons, what you have to roll to hit, and how much damage each weapon does. This is the box you'll use most during combat. This also contains your damage-dealing spells, which we can cover in a minute. In order to successfully make an attack, you must roll a d20. You get to add this number, your attack bonus, to the roll to try and get over or equal to your target's armor class. The attack bonus depends on a couple things. Generally, if you're using a ranged weapon, your dexterity modifier will be your attack bonus, and melee weapons use strength, although this can vary depending on the weapon itself. Be sure to check with your dungeon master. If you're proficient in the weapon you're attacking with, you can also add your proficiency bonus to your attack bonus. So, if you're attacking with a longsword, and your strength modifier is +3, and your proficiency bonus is +2, you can add 5 to whatever you roll on the attack roll d20. Next section is damage. The weapon itself provides a type of die you need to roll to determine how much damage you do. For example, a longsword is 1d8. Since it is a strength weapon, you also get an automatic damage bonus equal to your strength modifier. So if you roll a 1d8 and get a 4, you also add your +3 strength modifier for a total of 7 slashing damage. When writing down your weapons, always remember to put down the type of damage. Some enemies are resistant to different types of damage, so be aware. This is more for the Dungeon Master to keep track of and for you to know when to use your weapons or not in certain situations. A sword isn't going to do as much damage to a phantom as a spell might. Speaking of spells, we're going to briefly cover spellcasting. If you're a newer player and you don't want to get into spellcasting just yet, skip to this timecode right here to reach the final section. If you're still interested, here we go. There are 3 major numbers you need to hold onto when it comes to spellcasting: your spellcasting modifier, your spell attack bonus, and your spell save DC. Your spellcasting modifier is specified in character creation by your class and is one of your ability score modifiers. So, for example, if you're a sorcerer, your modifier is your charisma modifier, which, for example, let's say it's 3. Your spell attack bonus is basically like a standard attack bonus, but specifically for spells. To find it, you add your spellcasting modifier to your proficiency bonus. So, back to our example, if our spellcasting modifier is 3 and our proficiency bonus is 2, then our spell attack bonus is 5. Some spells require that the target makes a saving throw to resist the effects. In order to determine how difficult it is to resist your spells, you have a spell save DC. DC meaning difficulty class. The formula for this guy is 8 plus your spellcasting modifier plus your proficiency bonus, which for our sorcerer example here would give us 8 plus 3 modifier plus 2 proficiency, giving us a spell save DC of 13. Not bad, but most would be able to make the save. The target needs to roll equal to or above to pass the check and resist the effects of the spell. Still with me? Good, because there's just a bit more for spellcasters. Spells are sorted into levels. The higher the level, the more powerful the spell. However, you have a limited number of things called spell slots that are required to cast spells. No slots left? No more spells until the next long rest. However, you also get level 0 spells, which don't require spell slots and can be cast at will. These are called cantrips and can be very useful. Spell slots are also sorted by level and can only be used for that level of casting. A little confusing? Yeah, I get you. Let's use an example. For this character, let's say I have 4 level 1 spell slots and 2 level 2 spell slots. This sample spell here at level 1 I can cast 4 times because I have 4 level 1 spell slots. Unfortunately, the spell slots are tied to the level and not the individual spell. So, if I spend all 4 slots and want to cast this second sample spell here at level 1, I unfortunately can't because I've exhausted all the spell slots at this level. Now, I want to cast this second level sample spell. Since it is a higher level, it will require the higher level spell slot to cast it. Higher level slots are scarce, so cast higher spells wisely. Lastly, some spells can be more powerful if cast at higher levels. You'll see that in a spell's notes. Let's take this first sample spell here at level 1. I can cast it at level 1 and do 1d8 fire damage and subtract 1 spell slot. But let's say I want to do more damage. This sample spell happens to have a note for casting at higher levels, and it tells me that I can cast it at level 2 to do 2d8 fire damage instead of only 1d8. To do this, I simply subtract a level 2 spell slot instead and make the necessary rolls afterward. Oftentimes, it's useful to write these spells that can be cast at higher levels multiple times on the sheet at different levels, so you don't have to constantly look at the notes every time you want to cast at a higher level. And with that, that's spellcasting. Again, if you're a new player and spellcasting is still a little bit too much info to cram in while you're still learning the game, picking a non-spellcaster class might be best while you figure out the rules. Next is current and temporary hit points and hit dice. This part is pretty easy. Current hit points is where you keep track of how healthy your character is, like in most RPGs. If damage subtracted from your HP plunges your HP below 0, you are down for the count. You can't go over your hit point maximum, which is your full HP. Spells and features can also modify your health and give you extra hit points, which you track in the temporary hit points box. When you're hit, you subtract the temporary hit points before you move on to your actual HP. If you do reach 0 HP, don't worry, you are only unconscious and you make what's called a death saving throw, tracked in this next box. You make a death saving throw on each of your turns after reaching 0 HP. You roll a d20. If you roll 11 or higher, congratulations, you may mark down 1 success in one of these success circles. If you roll a 20 on the die, you come back to life with 1 HP. However, if you roll a 10 or lower, you must mark a failure in a failure circle. And if you roll a 1, then you must mark 2 failures. While doing death saving throws, if you make 3 successes, you are stable but still knocked out. If you make 3 failures, I am terribly sorry, but your character is now dead. Oh, one last small tip. If you're running out of room on a digital character sheet and have Adobe Acrobat on Windows, go up here and click Edit and select Prepare Form. Click on the box that doesn't have a lot of room, right-click and select Properties. Then pick the tab Appearance. Change the font size down to what fits all your features, then click Close, and click Close again to return to your character sheet. Unfortunately, there's still not a lot of room, and if you're not on Windows or don't have Adobe Acrobat, you're kind of left to write down just the names of your features. Another solution is to use the Google Sheets character sheet, or this dinky little Google Doc I put together. Yeah, it's not great, but it's something. And with that, that's about it. Don't feel ashamed if you have to watch this video again. I know it is a lot of information to take in. If you have any specific questions, you can drop them in the comments below or ask your Dungeon Master. And even not knowing 100% of all the info, just going ahead and diving headfirst into the game and learning how the rules apply along the way is just as valid an approach. Seeing the rules in action definitely helps contextualize a lot of the information. This was definitely a huge part of how I eventually learned all of the rules, and I recommend it. It's a little chaotic, but it does work. I wish you all the best in your first adventures. Good luck out there, guys.